Hello, so today I'm trying to do something a little bit different. I'm going to be going over the patch notes. Please, for reference, so I'm a diamond player, not that great. I don't think I'm that great, but I thought it'd be nice for this channel to try something new, and I'll see how these type of videos go, where I'm doing maybe my take on some of the content and maybe making predictions and stuff like that. These are taken from mortdog's recent YouTube video. Please go check it out. I'll have the link to his channel as well as the video in the description. So let's get started with this. So the first thing they kind of talk about is the traits. So in general, the big culprit is multicaster, right? That's kind of the elephant in the room. We all kind of know that multicasters is ridiculous. So this is the main upcoming nerf multicaster patch, which is really exciting and fun because I think it's gonna be really good for the game. So basically the trait, 3 and 4 multicaster got nerfed. 4 multicaster, this is a really big nerf. Basically 10% damage reduction, plus all the units. We'll see later, the units also got nerfed. So it's not just the trait, so don't get too alarmed. So there is a lot of nerfs. I feel like the 3 multicaster isn't a big nerf, but 3 multi wasn't that big of a deal anyways, right? But I think that you're still not gonna see people playing like 3 multis ever. I don't think, because a lot of times it was like, you wouldn't really play either. I think now maybe there might be a multi board where like you fit in like the 3 multis on like some of the comps where you're kind of like auxiliary multicaster, like think like those comps where you just play Sona and Talia, like Shurima Challenger, like something like that. But I still don't see any reason, right? It still got nerfed, and I think that you might just see 2 multis in a lot of cases where you're playing Sona, for example, just so it gets the extra cast. The main buff unit or buff spot is challengers, right? We'll talk about it a lot later, so I don't want to dwell too much on it, but Kaisa got a lot of buffs. Here, it feels like 4 challenger wasn't really changed, right? 4 challenger, what you normally played, like that was your stable board on 7, was what's it called? Was like Kaisa, Fiora, +1 Juggernaut, Nefari, and Warwick, right? I'm not gonna write it all out, but that was usually just a 4 challenger board. I feel like they buffed 6 challenger a lot. I'm not sure how big of an impact the 10% is going to be with the in terms of attack speed, but a lot of times with challenger you would only take it with like an extra combat augment. I think if you have a good combat augment, there might be a reason to play, like think of the combat augments that don't give any attack speed, right? Like some of the stat boosting ones, Rod and Sword, right? Like those augments might be really good with 6 challenger now, right? It's hard to say because like you have to put in like the shitter units to get up to 6, but that was a pretty big buff. And then 9 Ionia, I don't really care about this. I think the 9 traits, like the only one that's really big is 9 Demacia, and I think that they've said multiple times that they're not going to nerf 9 Demacia, so it's like, who really cares? Like if you get to a spot where these 9 boards are really, like if you're playing these 9 boards, it's like, I understand that they should be Giga Strong, right? Because it's a hard spot to get to. But I think this might also incentivize URF a little bit more. URF's kind of the new wave, the new hip thing to do, because people are trying to get around like all the rerolls. So they're like trying to play something that they can stabilize really late game and then go 9 and then win out that way. I'm not sure if we're going to be in like a go 9 meta, but I think like maybe at the start of the patch it might be, just because of the way multis are nerfed, and URF was already something that people were playing. If we're following that trend, I expect to see like a lot of people just trying to go 9, which is still fine to me, because I like it when the cadence of the game is a lot slower. I don't like it with all the rerolls early on where you kind of have to lock in a team really early on. I think it's fine to like roll down, get to level 7, roll down, see where your main carry is, and continue. So I think I'm okay with these changes, right? Like nothing bad about that. The big change, they didn't really change any 1 cost, that's fine. But I think some of the other rerolls that exist are probably still going to exist. It just comes down to how strong the 4 costs end up being. So they basically, like last patch, right? They buffed 4 costs, right? Buffed 4 costs. But now what they did is they also buffed all the multicasters. So it turned into like this weird spot where you couldn't stabilize without specific boards and specific items if you were going for like a 4-cost carry, because it was just better to like contest into multis, and because multis were really strong, other rerolls were also strong, right? So the reason other rerolls were strong was just because the cadence of the match, right? If you can imagine, like with multis, you were stable on like 3-1/3-2, you send it, right? So if you didn't also send it in these early stages of the match, you probably wouldn't be able to keep up with the pace that multicasters have, and you'd lose too much health. And then on 4-1, it's like complete the board, right? A lot of times, like you'd slight roll on this, and then you'd send it here. So it's like, imagine you don't hit your 4-cost carry, because usually you're rolling around 4-1 is when you hit 7 or 4-2, and that's when you're sending it for your 4-cost. But the multi-board was already like giga strong for all of this stage, so you're losing this stage. And then if you don't hit your 4-cost carry, or you don't have like really good items, you might not be able to stabilize 4-1. So that made other rerolls really good, because it was like, okay, if everybody else is sending it 3-2, I'll also send it 3-2 with a different reroll, and I'll try and just outlive based on health, and then hope that I hit a strong board later, right? So nerfing multis is really good. They broke his ankles, I'm pretty sure. There's not too much of a difference, but there's like a huge difference in the 3-star, and that usually is what made the board like really stable after 3-1, 3-2, right? So like I'm talking like late game, like when you hit like 4-2, it was the 3-star Twisted Fate was like a really good stabilization point, right? So glad to see that's changed. I think that hits the nail right on. I think that'll be really good for everything. So now we talk about some champion 3-cost changes. So I'm just gonna jump to Vel'Koz. So they also nerfed Vel'Koz. It's not like, it doesn't seem like that massive on his as much as Twisted Fate, but Vel'Koz is a little bit harder to hit. But hitting Vel'Koz was like the consolation prize, right? It was either you went for Twisted Fate 3 or you went for Vel'Koz 3, and it was like a guaranteed first. If it wasn't guaranteed first, it was like a 2. Like it averaged like, it was ridiculous. It averaged like a 3 if you just had 4 multicaster in, right? Without even 3-starring them. So hitting the 2-cost was there. Sorry, the level 2 wasn't that big of a hit, but the level 3 being a big hit, it just hurts the stabilization of the board, right? Like your board might not have that burst damage that is necessary to sustain your Galio frontline, because Galio wasn't nerfed. But I think this is enough with these two. We'll see. I think you can probably still play multicaster if you can get both of them, right? Like if you can get Vel'Koz 3 and Twisted Fate 3, or you can 3-star Sona or whatever, it should be fine. Sona didn't receive that much of a nerf. It's just a little bit of damage, right? But you didn't really play Sona for damage a lot of the times. You're playing her for like utility, right? Which is why I think she's fine, right? It's just like, you know, you're playing her so that when she casts, she gives the attack speed and she gives like the buffs, and then the spell damage, like a small percentage off. It's like, I don't think that's gonna affect Sona plays, but I think Sona's still like that unit. Like she's that one, like that girl that you put on every team. Like, you know, whenever you have to fit in like a Demacia, a lot of times Sona really works well, unless you're playing like a Slayer board, then you're playing for Quinn, right? I don't think that's gonna change. They buffed Darius. I don't think this is gonna be that great. They're increasing like the recast, and like they increased a lot. This seems like a lot because Darius was already buffed before. I feel like they're trying to make Darius a thing. I'm scared that it might turn into like a Darius reroll on Noxus boards, like there was last patch, which isn't that bad. I'm okay with 3-star 3-cost rerolls, because I feel like the cadence of when you roll for those 3 costs is the same as when you're playing like a 4-cost carry board. So I'm okay with the pacing, and I think that it's harder to hit, like, you know, I think it's as hard to hit a 3-star 3-cost, if not harder, than it is to hit a 4-star 2-star 4-cost, right? So that's like the way I think about it. So I'm okay if it becomes kind of strong. I'm just worried that it turns into like another reroll to worry about, because they didn't really nerf any of the other ones, and there's already quite a few. Nautilus, they keep buffing him. I think they're giving him like this passive and this armor. I feel like they should just buff his health a little bit. But you know, I feel like Nautilus, if you've ever played Nautilus, even 3-star Nautilus, I've had it many times, he doesn't tank. Like, he is like, if you play like a 3-star Nautilus and you play like a 3-star Galio, like Galio was so much tankier, right? And he's like a 2-cost. So I'm not sure if this extra 5 armor and MR is going to make that much of a difference. But I think like Nautilus is already in a good spot because he fits in on a lot of good boards because Bilgewater is pretty strong. And then they also buff Misfortune, right? So what I'm hoping, my dream, is that Bilgewater is like the challenger of last set, right? Because I just want to play Ornn, right? Deep down inside, I just want to play like bunch of items, flex, put your items, pick your carry later, decide on the carry after, right? I think that buffing Misfortune, even though it's at like a little bit, a lot of times like on a Bilgewater board, there's like an option, and even a strategist board, there's always an option that you can like go for items on MF, and try and stabilize that way, right? Because like if you think about Bilgewater, right, think about your main item carries like Nyla and GP if you hit the GP, right? Or even if you're thinking about it like a strategist board, a lot of times like you're left over with like extra items, like a lot of like mana items, for example, which Misfortune loves to cast, so you love to give her mana items, right? And then AP items, a lot of times like Nyla, a lot of times you don't really need AP items, you're just looking for like bows and swords. So Misfortune also takes AP items. So it makes it so that you don't need to like greed for items. You can kind of slam them on whoever you get. Like you get a bunch of AP items, it's like, okay, I'm going to stabilize around Misfortune, maybe go for Misfortune 3 until I hit the right units or the right items for the rest of the comp, right? And it makes it a lot more like, in my opinion, fun to play. So I think this is good. I like that I don't know if she'll be like super broken with this. I already felt like she was pretty good. But it's so hard to tell what was strong because of how dominant Multicaster was. Because it's like any level of experimentation, it was like, well, this is going to lose to Multicaster anyway, so I only can play like the Giga capped out boards, right? Anyways, so champions, right? Fiora, a little bit of HP buff, it's going to help challengers. I think Nasus, a little bit of buff, it will help. Like, he was already really tanky with stealing the stats. I think this will help like Shurima and challenger boards. That's where you saw Nasus a lot. You also just see him like thrown in whenever you need a Juggernaut. He's like a great frontline tank. I think it's gonna turn, like, I think before Sejuani was that girl that you always put in on your board as being like the Giga tank. They reduced a lot of the passive damage, which I think hurts the Nyla Sejuani comp a lot, because like the Nyla Sejuani was like super strong, but I think the board will still be fine, right? Even though they nerfed it a bunch. Like it's like minus like 50%, right? I still think Nyla Sejuani will be fine because I think it just now doesn't stable. Like before, it was stable with like a level 1 Nyla, right? It was stable with like a 1-star Nyla, right? I think now you need like 2-star Sejuani, 2-star Nyla to probably be like super stable, which just makes it into like one of those cadences where you have to like send it for one of them, save up, go 8, 2-star your board on 8 because you're rolling for too many 4 costs, or like save up a bunch of gold and send it on 7 and hope you hit, instead of just being like super stable and just sitting for a lot of the game, which is what kind of happened with the Nyla board a lot of times, which I think is fine. But they didn't touch Nyla, which is why I think that it's probably still okay. Maybe the Nyla Sejuani board turns into like, instead of playing like 3 Bilgewater, you play more towards like you can probably like, if you swap, like even though you need the Freylord and the Shred, it's like if you have like an option of Shred besides Freylord, you might be able to swap into like a Nasus Nautilus, and then you have +1, so on 8 you can fit in 5 Bilgewater, and it might be like that type of board now, which, you know, we'll see how that turns out. That's my prediction. Silco got buffed. I think 6 Sork and 8 Sork was really strong. I think it's only stronger now. I think this is like a very big buff because he got a mana buff when he's already like easy to cast. I think this means that he can take 1 less auto with certain items. I'm not 100% sure because I didn't do the math, but that's like, this could be a really big buff, just changing the mana like this. They did nerf blue buff, so maybe it's all okay, and maybe that's why they changed it, because they knew they were nerfing blue buff. They didn't want to hit Silco indirectly. But I don't know, it seems like a lot of damage. Silco I never felt like was super strong, but I feel like if you build a Sork board, or if you build like a really strong strategist board, the AoE just does wonders, especially if you have like a Giga tank, because he's like AoE damage and AoE healing. The big one that I see that changed was Kaisa. It's not like that huge, but it's pretty huge. They increased spell damage by a lot, so like 5% on the 1 cost and like 9% on the 2-star, or sorry, 5% on the 1-star and 9% on the 2-star. I think with the challenger buff, this buff, and then there's also one more buff that I'll point out with Kaisa. I think Kaisa might be one of those new units where, not overtuned, but it's gonna make some boards with Kaisa a lot more viable. I still don't think like 6 challenger, 8 challenger is gonna be like the greatest thing to go for, but I think you might start to see Kaisa creep in the same way like Fiora and Jarvan and some of the other units kind of creep in on mini boards. Jarvan's different because he's very utility. I think Kaisa might creep in on some other boards where you already have one challenger in. So like Kaisa, like I'm thinking like Kaisa Shurima might be a thing. Just like where you have like, you know, a dead Nafari or like a dead other challenger, like, you know, it might also be like a Kaisa Ionia spat. That's a bit like wishful thinking because I think the boards with Nyla not getting touched, I think like the Vanquisher line also works really well. But I think the extra damage does a big thing, right? I think a lot of this patch is going to come down to item management, because I think if we go towards a meta where there's a lot less rerolls and a lot more forecast, it might turn into the case where like things like Ornn and Ezreal, right? Like already people are trying to play Ornn and Ezreal right now when they're going for like 9 boards and 3 boards, 9 boards, like level 9 boards and going towards like level 8 complete boards. Because you have to think like a lot of times these units or these legends are favored when you have let me say, so item, legend, you need diverse team, right? What do I mean by that? So you need a team that takes like AP, AD, like you need them to be able to take multiple things, right? So like for example, like Sork's really strong, but you need AP items, right? Like strategist, challenger. I know the handwriting's not that good, but you know I'm trying to get my point across fast. Challengers. What's another one? Bilgewater, right? With some of the buffs that I've been talking about and some of the nerfs, when you have these boards where you have units that can take both AP items and AD items. Like if you want a recency bias or like a previous patch, right? Set 9 challengers was like that, right? Basically, if you have somebody who takes like a lot of AP items, right, and AD items, and you can separate them, then it doesn't matter what items you get because you'll always have somebody to put them on, and you can just pivot your board around a different carry. Even if it's not like the most optimal one, you can stabilize around that other carry until you hit late game, and then you get more items, then you can put them on all the carries, and you just itemize your whole board, right? So Kaisa Fiora is like that, where you can put AP on Kaisa, AD on Fiora. Bilgewater is like that because you can put AP items on Misfortune and AD items on Nyla. Shurima's like that, or Strategist is like that because you can put like, I guess there's not really people that can take AD items really well, but I think a lot of those kind of work out in a similar way. That's what I'm kind of anticipating. They buff some of the 5 costs, which also concerns me that it might be like one of those like fast 9. Maybe Aesol makes a comeback. I don't think these Rise buffs are that big. Maybe it takes 1 less auto to cast for like some of these ones, but it's just Bilgewater and Piltover Rise. I think those ones still aren't going to be as strong as some of the other Rises. I don't think this mana casting buff does anything. I think Vel'Koz got a really big buff because the extra armor and this helps a lot with sustain, as well as overall damage, which is insane. And I think Ahri just getting like a 1-star Ahri getting a huge buff, and this one as well. It's like 15%, right? It's like 10% extra damage. She already did a lot of damage. You stack crit, right? Vanquisher Ahri, right? There's lots of boards that Ahri was already clearing the whole board in one hit. I think it does a lot to just buffer damage in general. But anyways, I digress. Let's go over items. So blue buff, I think this needed a nerf anyways. I don't know how weak it's going to be, but they also buffed Spear of Shojin. So I think a lot of times it might be better just to make a Shojin on certain units if you just want to get like that extra AD. The AD isn't that great, but a lot of times the stats don't really show it because it's really hard to look at the stats because of how bad Challengers was this last patch. But Shojin was like a really good Kaisa item for a long time, right? And they just buffed Kaisa and Challengers a bunch, and now they're making it so that it gets extra AD, right? Which it already gave AP, right? the Spear of Shojin, and it already gives mana. So giving it extra AD, it can make Kaisa into an actual beast, because with the extra attack speed from challengers, even with 6 challengers, and you give a Spear of Shojin on her, it might be like, you know, you see a Shojin, it's a Kaisa game, right? Because it's already really good, and this is a huge buff in just general damage, and it works really well into the challenger line, because Shojin works by like doing attacks and killing and stuff, and that helps your mana regen. But the AD damage, if you have like increased attack speed, is also going to be insane, right? So I think this is going to be a Kaisa patch. I'm calling it. I think people are going to find a way to play Kaisa a lot, which is good, because that gives like 1 extra, because already like they didn't touch Mord and they didn't touch Nyla, right? But the problem is, it seems like Spear of Shojin might be like a really good like challenger Kaisa item. So I think that what this ends up is that TF Legend might still be a thing, right? Because it depends if the rerolls, right? The TF Legend was really good, because if there was like rerolls and people sending it, you really needed TF to play your 4 cost carries. Like you think like double RFC Nyla, right? RFC wasn't even touched. This is just like the Radiant RFC, right? So if you need like these specific items sometimes to really make units shine into like a very broken way, then TF kind of turns into like this unit to pick. Because a lot of times it's like, you can't chance it if the pace of the game is too fast. If the pace of the game is really slow, then you can do what I was saying. You can pick Ezreal, you can pick Ornn, you can slam items, you can greed if you want to, but you can play your items around multiple different people, and these flex boards really work well. But if you're not playing like flex boards where you can put items on different units, what ends up happening, the reason why TF is so good is because like you're losing so much health because there's rerollers already. So stabilizing late game was really important. So it's like, if I have like RFC and 1-star Nyla, it's better than having like a 2-star Nyla with no items, right? In a lot of cases. And that's why TF kind of was really dominant. So I think it's still going to exist. I'm hoping that like, because of the general buffs to some of the other boards, that you can kind of just play around. Like, you know, I think it's easier to hit a Shojin than it is to hit an RFC, just because it uses like different items, and they might not be as contested now because blue buff isn't going to be contested. But either way, we'll see how it plays out. I hope that these flex boards, like, or these boards that use different AP-AD dual carry mixes, kind of make their way back into like commonplace, and I think that would be really fun. I don't think there's anything else here. Crown Guard, I feel like I never really used it that much, except for like the what's it called? What's her name? Starts with an N. Nico. I only really used it with Nico board. Maybe I just was too stupid and I wasn't abusing it. Protector's Vow. This seems like a big mana change, which could hurt Jarvan, right? But I don't think it's that big of a deal, because like it's not like gonna stop you from playing Jarvan. It's not gonna stop you from making it, because like you're still gonna put something on Jarvan. Maybe you put a spear on him instead. But yeah. And then these are just Radiant. I don't really care about Radiant items, because it's so rare that happens. So augments. They changed when binary airdrop is given. I think that's a good change, because I think it was really broken early game. Even if it's like prismatic, it was just like, okay, they just win for free. So I think that's great. Built different, they made some buffs to it. Just learn your built different board. Don't give away a free win. I think this is a lot, right? It's a lot of extra stats, I think, especially late game. Built different 3 isn't really changed that much, but built different 2 is changed, and it might be good, right? And they're also not offering it in middle game anymore, which is pretty good. So you can plan early if you hit it early. I always suggest, like, to everybody, like, you know, you can one trick, you can play your boards, but you should always know like a comp in a good position. Like if you have an opener where you have like, you know, 1-star 2 cost, like you have a bunch of upgrades and you hit your augment and it's built different, and you have no traits in, and you have a bunch of like non-trait sharing upgrades, then you know you have a good opener for it. You know, you just gotta know what you have to convert to. Late game, you should learn the line, right? And I think because you don't want to like throw away a free win if they give it to you. Cybernetic Leech, they improved a little bit. Endless Hordes, they improved a little bit. I never really go for these unless it's like, these are more like situational. Just check your stats before taking them. I don't think it's like a guaranteed take it every time type of buff. Golden Ticket, small nerf, that's good. I think it was already really good. Hopefully there's not too many rerolls and it doesn't become as dominant as it is, because it's almost like a guaranteed win. Riftwalk got buffed a little bit. I've lost so many times with Riftwalk. I think that's great. I feel like it should be a little... I felt like Riftwalk was the weakest of all of them. I think the only other one that's really weak is the Galio one. But the Galio version of this like trait, where it's like 1 giga unit, it's not that important because Galio's already really strong, so I don't think it needs to be buffed in any way, shape, or form. And then we have these are all just fine. I don't really see anything that big. I think Wandering Trainer increasing the gold might mean Bard has played a little bit. Bard's really good on those item comps as well, because all of his items past his first one are kind of like itemy augments. So he might be like, I played Bard a lot in place of Ornn when rerolls were happening, just because I was trying to like get like, you know, a giga unit if I hit the comfort, like or if I hit the Bard tier 1. But he also has like the Caretaker's thing where it like gives you a bunch of radiant items as well when you level up. So that one's like all his like his silver, his gold, and his prismatic first like 2-1 offers are all pretty good. So he might, and his he gives items on stage 3-2. So that's like really good. So I think like he might work out. Penetrate Shackles gives 2 less units, and Rising Infamy gives 2 less. They both give 1 less unit. I think these are good changes. I still think Penetrate Shackles is my most hated out of all the augments. I think it's so stupid that it does so much extra damage to Noxus. I feel like I can't pick if I'm going Noxus or not, and I think Noxus didn't get any buffs. So I feel like the next patch is going to be really like I'm hoping it might not be, but I'm hoping that it turns into like a 4-cost meta, instead of like this early game reroll meta where most of the boards you're trying to complete with because I think most of them have been tapped down since the beginning of the patch. And I think the strongest boards, I think Noxus is still obviously going to be strong. They didn't touch Mordekaiser. I think Nyla board with RFC is still going to be strong. They didn't touch it. I think Azir board is going to be strong. And I think Challengers might creep its way in. But if you look here, there's like, to me it looks like there's going to be like 4 playable 4-cost boards, which means that it's not going to be like the most ridiculous contesting, right? Because I haven't even talked about Aphelios, and Aphelios isn't that bad, right? Like, he sometimes worked it if you have like gunner traits in, but what I'm showing is like a lot of the 4-costs, we've come to the point in the patch where like they're all kind of getting to a point where they're playable, like they're all kind of clickable. And then some bug fixes. I'm not going to talk about it. The only big one that I saw, I can't tell if did I miss anything here? I know there's the Aatrox one that was annoying. Oh, this isn't the one. Sorry. Not this one. This one. Aatrox with Demacia Radiant item. If you didn't know, if you played Aatrox and you gave him a Demacia spat, when he respawns, he wouldn't have his Radiant item. It was so grief, because a lot of times we were playing Slayer Demacia, and then you couldn't just itemize towards your Aatrox if you had an Aatrox too, because he just loses the Radiant item. So that's like, whatever. I don't think there's any of these that like, I don't know what these are. I don't think, I think that none of these are really big to me. Okay, so anyway, so those were my main takeaways. I hope this video was kind of fun to watch in a way. If you like the content already. If you didn't and nobody watches it, that's cool too. I just won't do these anymore. I just want to give my opinions, because and a little bit of predictions and some insights in case people like, you know, in case I'm your main consumer channel, which, you know, I doubt I am, but if I am, that's cool. And like, comment, subscribe, and be nice to people. Goodbye.